was just inking. I lost the recording for the actual penciling and blocking in piece for this one. It is part of the kind of the series of monsters, so I did an alien this time with an astronaut, intrepid explorer on a deserted moon trying to fend for his life. And I think one of the things that I really wanted to kind of hit with this piece is staging for action and storytelling and all that stuff. I'm working on a storyboard course right now. It's a workshop, and just so many different things that you learn are very, very simple concepts. Just the idea of clarity and communicating a single idea at a time, and all of these things that to say in plain English is very simple. However, to put into practice and actually make it happen with your pen or your pencil is very difficult. Just when you're getting the mileage out of your drawing implement. And so this is a fairly straightforward, I'll say, staging for this piece. But I think that you kind of have to walk before you can run in a lot of ways. So when you're staging action, obviously there are a lot of ways to use foreshortening and set things in the foreground and the background and ensure that, there's a lot of dynamic perspective going on in the piece. But the most surefire way to have everything read in a piece is to just have it be flat, lateral. The page and the screen are presented in 2 dimensions, so you're having to design with that in mind. So anytime that you don't cheat the 2-dimensional nature of the platform, you are in essence really just appealing to the nature of the format. And this can get really boring really fast. There are plenty of valid critiques that say that you should not opt for flat staging exactly like this, simply because it can get boring if that's the only thing that you're doing. But I do think that it is very possible to make flat staging very cinematic. I think the main thing is that the flat staging is very theatrical. So if you think of guys like Jackie Chan, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, a lot of the wuxia and martial arts films, that they employ a lot of theatrical staging because they have their roots in the theater. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that on how you can make flat staging still dynamic and interesting, and also how to break that rule, how to break out of that for sure. That's not a one-size-fits-all. But for this piece, wanting to ensure that the dynamic of this guy leaping away crunched together and just trying to fend off this beast, and the beast prepared to strike, it's difficult to imagine a clearer way to demonstrate that than with this flat staging. And that's really the core that you're trying to get at, is what is going to most clearly tell the story that this image is supposed to tell, right? It's a question of what is going to make a viewer instantly recognize what's going on in this image. And it's interesting, film, animation, all of that stuff is different from illustration in some very significant ways. And the primary one being that the film and animation are moving images. They're images displayed in rapid succession. And so with that in mind, the compositional elements of film share a lot in common with photography and illustration, but they are also very importantly limited by how quickly those images are displayed on the screen. And that is just a fact of the medium. And so you do have to stage things more clearly there's time for a viewer to take a look at a photograph and sit with it and notice all of the details and the Easter eggs and all of those things. And now, it is interesting with DVDs and freeze frames and streaming and all that stuff. You can pause at any point. So the inclusion of Easter eggs and things that you would never really normally be able to see from the naked eye are becoming a little bit more commonplace. But that's not like the natural way that you view the image, right? So for an illustration, I probably could have pushed this more, but also that is a trick of your skill as an artist, drawing and designing this alien creature in a way that would support 3 dimensions would be quite difficult. Just my limited understanding of creature anatomy, and clearly a lot of inspiration being drawn from like a panther or a lion or something. All of those things are, and that's what you have reference for. But it's just easier to get the silhouette and understand what we're looking at, because you do run into that. You could have a beautifully rendered, very realistic idea of this alien creature, but if people are too abstracted from the form, the silhouette of the creature, then it won't read no matter how long they look at it. And in fact, they'll look away sooner because they're not really drawn into where they should be looking. And that's, there are master classes, entire courses just spent focusing on composition and compositional storytelling, visual storytelling, and all those things. But in this instance, it was just, how do I portray this life or death scenario with the most clarity? And a lot of that is the silhouette, so like not bunching too much. That astronaut is kind of clumped together, but all of the limbs are kind of pointing in the direction of the beast, and he's jumping away, so that creates a direct visual link to the creature, and then the creature is hunched over, and the tails and everything are pointed directly towards the astronaut. So those 2 figures are really creating the visual interest between them by being oriented at each other, and that is stuff that you, when you're doing storyboards and comics and all of these mediums that imply that time is passing with just single drawings, that's so incredibly difficult to keep in mind when you're doing multiple panels to show action over time, right? You're just looking at all of these things and trying to remember these fundamental practices, but they just kind of go out the window because you're also trying to make a decent drawing. But that's the challenge, is being able to keep all of those balls in the air while you're juggling them, and ensure that, okay, I do have solid drawings, fundamental pieces are well established and maintained in this drawing, but also at every single point there is a very clear delineation of these characters are the ones that are in conflict. They are very clearly the ones that are interacting with each other, and everything in the composition is either pointing at them or separating them or really conveying the meaning of the emotional core of the scene. And there are a couple of things in this, especially the astronaut, like that leg and that arm are forming a little bit of a tangent. They aren't exactly lined up, but they are forming a bit of a tangent unintentionally. These are the kinds of things that when I was doing this at the time, it was Inktober, so I was moving quickly, and why it's important to reflect on, especially these challenges, these month-long challenges. It's really important to go back and say, okay, let's look with a fresh eye, go back to past years, even not just a couple of months later, but years later, and say, all right, cool, I like how this one came out overall. This illustration is working for me. What did I not do as well that's taking away from how cool this piece is, or could be. And you know, the ground plane that the alien creature is standing on is not super duper solid. I think some extra reference on that would have made this really stand out more. But again, speed was key here, as it is with comics and storyboarding. Speed is definitely a key factor that you have to keep in mind. So, you know, I can very easily look back in time and say, oh, I should have spent more time on this, and you can say that about anything. Artists are frequently quoting that wise sentiment of, you know, pieces are never finished, they're abandoned. Same has been said about musical albums and illustrations and films and so on and so forth. You can totally beat it to death in the editing room, but you eventually have to kind of let go and let it live on its own. So as with this entire series, I've got some splashes of red for visual interest, and that is a deliberate choice to make it just kind of have a pop, and that pop is placed right in the center of the focal mass between the alien and the astronaut, so that again everything's pointing to that point, and we're focused on the space between them to accentuate the conflict, right? That's really what we're going for. And the background elements as well are intended to be non-distractive. I probably could have put that spire by the alien a little bit further back, maybe kind of cropped off screen, because right now it is kind of breaking up that figure in a way that is losing some of the visual continuity. And oh man, I mean, layouts too. Not just drawing the figures, but the layouts you have to keep in mind so much. It's why a lot of those Looney Tunes shorts, especially the Maurice Noble ones, were so brilliant, was the minimalism of his backgrounds in terms of compositions, where every single piece was placed and or removed in order to ensure that it was a good compositional element, right? So that's a really crucial piece here, that it's being adhered to. And yeah, the background planets, you know, I could have stuck with kind of just a long black expanse of space, right? I could have done that, but I did not, because again, the astronaut is fairly dark toned, and I could have definitely lightened him up, but I also wanted some contrast between him and the alien. So placing him against a planet in the background and having kind of a distant star in the background were ways to add some light to the scene, and some just breaking up the visual elements of the background in ways that were more organic and kind of cool. And I'll also, you know, add some kind of space dust and some stars to the space here in a second. And that's just, at every point in the process, you have to revisit the piece and say, okay, what's not exactly clear, what detail is getting lost, what visual elements are not being completely portrayed in a way that anyone could understand this, and just looking at it from that perspective and tweaking, moving. I mean, digital art is fantastic for this, right? Because I can just lasso tool a piece of the drawing and just move it, right? That's such a huge boon to not settling for a subpar composition. Just being able to always say, like, okay, I know that I could do this better, and it's also fairly easy to do that, simply because, you know, the non-destructive editing capabilities of just duplicating the layer and moving stuff around and just testing it and see if it works. It's also why thumbnails are important. I did do, I believe, some thumbnails for this. Clearly, I could have done more, because this is not the ultimate version of this illustration, but you know, that's a piece in storyboarding and comics and backgrounds and all those things that are also super important. All those thumbnails doing really small pieces with just very primitive shapes, very, very low detail, very sketchy, very rough, just so that you can say, like, okay, I've actually put rubber to road and tested all of these different ideas in a way that I'm seeing it on the screen or are on the page in a way that I am engaging with this as I would a finished work and saying, okay, this is very clear, this is not very clear, just kind of placing some basic values and stuff. And again, here I am actually lightening this up because I did notice that it was not super clear and standing out terribly well against that background, that very black background. And also wanted to create some more dynamic interest of the very bright armor and accents against the darker suit. And then some highlights just to allow a little bit more pop from the background. And that really is what allowed me to create kind of a cool composition. Again, if you enjoyed these videos and you like checking out my process stuff, please don't hesitate to subscribe. Check out some of my social links in the description. I also do animation. Check out the Black Sun series, which you can find in the cards or in the after video links. I really appreciate you checking this out, and stay tuned for next time. Thanks again.